Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for being here and for your service to our country. Madam Secretary, there has always been an effort to take care to keep a bright line between our military and partisan political activity. Recently read an article by General Milley, talked about some of the challenges in the military today, and one of them was the politicization of the military ranks. Is this a problem, a challenge? And if so, what are you doing about it?
Senator Durbin, I think it's absolutely essential that the U.S. Army remain apolitical. Americans of all political persuasions have to be able to look to the Army and feel confident that it is apolitical and that it will follow the lawful orders of the Commander-in-Chief. So I do think we have to be concerned about that. I get concerned when I see the Army sometimes being put into a position where it becomes a political football. I think, the chief and I do everything possible to try to avoid that. We have reminded all of our soldiers, that they are not to engage in political activities, wearing their uniforms, for example. So it is something we try to reinforce all the time, that we must remain apolitical.
Glad to hear that. Let me mention to you, you talked about industrialization. I just want to put a plug in for the Rock Island Arsenal and the depots and arsenals across the United States that have risen to the challenge time and again. And I hope you'll make them part of your thinking about future demands for developing high-quality materials and equipment.
We are very much factoring in our arsenals into our organic industrial base plan, and I'm actually planning to get up to Rock Island in early June, I believe.
Good. Glad to hear that. General, you're watching this war unfold in Ukraine, as we all are. And we were told at the beginning, before the Russians initiated their advancement into Ukraine itself, that our experts thought it was likely to be 3 days before Kyiv fell and 3 weeks before most of Ukraine fell to the Russians, and we would have a multi-year resistance effort that followed. That didn't happen. Kyiv is still standing, and thank goodness the government is still in place, and most of the efforts by the Russians have not commanded territory to this day except for the Far East. So what lessons do you learn as a professional in the Army observing this in terms of the efforts by the Ukrainians, and I guess especially what have you learned about the Russian capacity to fight a war?
Well, Senator, one of my biggest takeaways as I take a look at what's happening is this idea of leadership and this idea of will. And if you take a look at, what a lot of people do when they do analysis, they'll take a look at the Russian army, they'll say they have very good capability, they have very good equipment, they have so much of it, and when they look at the Ukrainians, they say, hey, this is a much bigger country than Ukraine, has much more equipment. But there's that idea of leadership, and I think the fact that the president of Ukraine stayed and said he was going to lead from that country, the fact that the will of the people, everyone stayed and fought, that is like almost the secret sauce of every military. And very, very important to have cohesive teams that stay and fight. And sometimes that's hard to measure, but we're seeing the importance of that right now in Ukraine. They stayed to fight, and it's making a difference.
So if the projections and initial timetable turned out to be wrong because of the factors that you just mentioned, could you speak to the equipment and capacity of the Russians in the field in terms of their fighting capacity and in terms of our need for preparing for the eventuality of defending against that?
Well, we take a look at what the Ukrainians are asking for. They certainly want artillery. The Russians actually use artillery very, very effective. They fight with fires. They haven't been very effective with their ground maneuver forces, mainly because they're fighting tanks without infantry. They're not doing combined arms operations. And so when we take a look at what we need in an army, we can take a look at what the Ukrainians are asking for. They want long-range fires. They do want armor capability. They want air and missile defense. They've been very, very effective with the javelins. They want counter-fire radars that can determine where the Russians' artillery is, and they're putting that together with training and will, and that's why they're having the success they're having. And let's not forget logistics. Very, very important.
If I could ask one last question. Madam Secretary, I am all in when it comes to standing behind the Ukrainians, and I've made that well known to my colleagues. I think it's heartening that it's such a bipartisan feeling on Capitol Hill, and that's almost a rarity, but it is happening. In terms of our capacity and the equipment that we have warehoused and available and in production, are we being pushed to a limit where we have to reconsider any aspects of our own defense and how much is being allocated?
At this time, Senator, I mean, certainly we keep a close eye on, what our minimum requirements are. And as requests from the Ukrainian military have come in, we have factored that into our analysis. But at this time, I'm not aware of us being unable to provide a particular type of assistance to the Ukrainians because we felt like it would jeopardize our readiness. Now, I do think, we are working with industry to try to help them be able to ramp up production so that we can continue, as it looks like this is going to be a rather protracted conflict. We do need to do everything we can, I think, to be able to continue to provide assistance to the Ukrainians while making sure that we have the stockpiles we need.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.